I think in general, Bitcoin is now a kind of a superior alternative in a lot of ways, and so I'm more active and interested in the Bitcoin space. I do some venture capital work there. I kind of work with some startups, and I provide a lot of research for that space. So I generally prefer that, but I still use gold as a diversifier.
Why did Bitcoin regain $27K? No one is surprised by Gensler's actions. Also, why Binance's alleged commingling of assets isn't the same as FTX's alleged commingling of assets. With a few zigzags along the way, Bitcoin shook off the Securities and Exchange (SEC) Enforcement Week to climb back up above $27,000 on Tuesday for the first time since the weekend. The largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization was recently trading at $27,200, up 4.3% over the past 24 hours. BTC sank near $25,400 on Monday, in the hours after the SEC announced a lawsuit against Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange by trading volume. But Bitcoin started edging upward by the end of the day and continued its path even as the SEC announced a second lawsuit against Binance rival Coinbase on Tuesday, and later in the day, asked a federal court to grant a temporary restraining order to freeze assets tied to Binance, the U.S. The fact that the market has rebounded leads me to believe that this was at least partially priced in. Joshua Franklin. No one is surprised by Gensler's actions. Hello and welcome to Money Talks. In today's video, Lyn Alden shares his perspective on the future of Bitcoin and why she thinks that Bitcoin is the best investment asset for the next 10 years. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video.
I agree. I think, the next 6-12 months are very uncertain because of liquidity issues we discussed before. But when I look out 2 to 3 years, I think it'll have another significant bull cycle. And that's also one of the investments that I think, I intend to hold it for over a decade more. I think it's a play that, goes on. And there's very few things that I think could change that thesis. But as long as I continue to hold that thesis, I think that's going to be one of the better performing assets out there. I think there's still a window in the next 3 to 5 years where gold could do well. I think we're in kind of very uncertain times right now. And so the way it's kind of shaping up at the moment is like gold is like central bank money and Bitcoin is like people money, money for the people. And there's still this dynamic where Bitcoin's not really big enough for central banks to at least large central banks to really care about. And so I think there's this window here where gold's interesting, but I do think that Bitcoin is going to be the better performer over most cycles for at least for investors that can withstand that volatility and that are willing to do time to research it and understand exactly what they own.
The Times Franklin noted that institutional investors remain ambivalent months after crypto exchange FTX's spectacular collapse in November and the increasingly harsh U.S. regulatory environment. Many funds that invested in FTX got burned, and some partners that led their firms' FTX deals were fired, Franklin wrote. As a result, many VCs are feeling nervous to enter crypto. There is a similar trepidation among institutional allocators like pensions and endowments that broadly were burned on their earlier crypto allocations. Franklin added that even hedge funds that were not too long ago accelerating their participation in the crypto space faster than any other institutional group have also applied the brakes amid concerns about regulation, a lack of credit, and viable venues to trade on in the U.S., limited custody options, and angst about doing business with digital asset firms that may not survive in the wider crypto contagion.
I also think there's an intersection between AI and Bitcoin in the sense that people have been talking for a while about micropayments or machine-to-machine payments or human-to-machine payments or machine-to-human payments. And we're actually seeing really early signs of that. So, the existing money system has all sorts of frictions. It has global payment frictions, for people that send payments globally regularly. You run into more frictions than just, domestically. You can't really do microtransactions because there's like a minimum threshold for how big payments have to be. Like, for example, like payment services will charge like a 30-cent minimum fee, which means sending anything under a couple dollars doesn't really make sense. You can't just pay 25 cents for an article to read online, for example. And with, like, say, Bitcoin, Lightning Network, and other sort of scaling solutions, it opens up real-time micropayments. And because it's open source, it also means that AI can actually use it without anyone's permission, right? And AI doesn't have to go get a bank account. Instead, they can, there's already been cases where creators will give an AI agent a small Lightning balance that they can pay. If they have a task to do and they say, okay, I have to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they find out that step 4 is that they could use a certain API, or they need beefier processing that they can rent. They can actually spend that on completing that step of the task. And then you can imagine maybe a couple of years in the future, that gets done by accident. Maybe someone says, I need you to do X, these 10 steps, or I want this outcome. And at one point along the way, the AI realizes that money would be useful to it. And so it either asks and says, well, I'd like some money to go buy this, or it could go out and earn it. There's ways that you can. It's open source. You can spin up a wallet. You could post content on Nostr and get tips, and people don't even know you're an AI. I mean, it's kind of far-fetched, but not really. And so, open source money is inherently just more ready to use for various agents that we automate, including automated funding. And so I think you could have an environment where there's human to machine payments, there's machine to machine payments, there's machine to human payments. It's just kind of a more part of our automated life, which includes the transfers of monetary value, which is not always between humans. And it doesn't mean, of course, that AI has to be like sapient. I'm not talking about like super sci-fi stuff. I just mean agents that are programmed to do something fairly sophisticated, and that using products or services in a digital way is an important part of their process, and they have basically a budget.
The short-term uncertainties in the crypto market do not appear to have changed institutional investors' long-term outlook. Recently, despite a hostile U.S. regulatory environment, Cboe Digital, a major options exchange in the United States, has had its application to offer margined futures contracts for Bitcoin approved by the United States Commodities Regulator. The Cboe Digital approval will help increase Bitcoin exposure among institutional investors. Bitcoin price continues to be directly impacted by macroeconomic events, and it is also likely that further regulatory actions will continue having some effect on BTC price. In the long term, market participants still expect the price of Bitcoin to recover, especially as more financial institutions are seemingly embracing BTC.
Something where you feel, next 10 years, this is somewhere I really believe in to invest in.
Probably Bitcoin. It's probably a decent way to finish it. I think it benefits. I think the network effect and the overall technology is still not understood, and I think it's still strengthening. I think as other things happen, as AI makes certain things cheaper, any sort of scarce asset is attractive, and something that should hold its value long term. And then, like I said, it's basically just I think in many ways it's the future of money, and so it's something that while you can never be 100% sure about. I think it's probably my number one investment theme.
So, is it a good time to invest in Bitcoin? And what's your prediction for Bitcoin in 2023? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.